Great.
Yes, I've gone through them very quickly.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
We're now live on YouTube, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vaughan, I believe you were in the middle of going through what we have, page 24, 3.3. You were going through that at that stage.
Yes. I think I was dealing with the two licensing objectives which I consider to be engaged. If I could deal with them in ascending order. Firstly, the prevention of crime. I don't need, I believe, to dwell too long on this. It is touched on by some objectors, not all. But with respect to them, I suspect it is tangential to the principal objection, which is noise. But I'll deal with it anyway. The point seems to have been made by those in the locality of the applicant premises that there has been some noise in the streets, bottles, shouting, and so on. And I mean absolutely no disrespect to them, but of course, it's pretty obvious that any such behaviour which we don't tolerate and would deprecate along with them is going to happen whether it's down to alcohol on a rooftop or inside the premises. This isn't an application for new premises, it's variation of existing premises. And your licensing policy, if I respectfully refer to that, makes it clear that a licensee's control, it doesn't abrogate his responsibility whilst on the premises, but after people depart, then it's difficult, it's impossible for him to control. That is not to be taken, we say, as any indication that there is problem emanating from our premises. Of an ongoing nature at least. And I point to the fact that there are no police representations.
Excuse me, Mr. Vaughan. Julie, did you want to say something?
Oh.
No, I was holding my bottle of water, sorry.
Oh, right. You don't have a question. You're not asking. Fine, thank you. You had your hand raised. Mr. Vaughan, carry on.
I do apologise. And the other point I was going to make is that the premises themselves are in an area which are no doubt familiar to members of the committee. There is after the redesign of the road layout at St James a couple of years ago, there's a large area for bus stop. There are two other licensed premises with 1 o'clock closures in them, the public house of the Foundryman and the Thomas Beckett. There's also the late night, I say late night, 1 p.m. closure for alcohol at St James Working Men's Club. There are at least 2 off licenses closing at 10 p.m. as well, all in a couple of 100 yards of one another. And we would make the point that it's rather unfair to cast any social problems such as those mentioned or touched on and put them at our door alone. I don't want to make too much of it because, as I say, I don't believe that that is engaged to any great extent in prevention of crime. But of course, as I've said, I've got Mr. Barnes available to deal with any questions that might be put to him by members of the committee or the objector. If I could now address the committee on the main thrust of the objections, which is excess noise. We make no pretense of the fact that it isn't engaged. What we do say is that any risk is manageable by conditions. And having had the opportunity of reading both the initial report of Mr. Randall and his updating report, as you can see, he has confirmed and the photographs make clear that his recommendations as to the screening have been fully implemented. I hope that much is clear from the photographs. There are now high walls which have a considerable effect on decibel measurements in the street at the back and in the vicinity. One of the objectors, according to the postcode address we have been given, lives, again, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but as far away as the street facing the park at the bottom of Althorpe Road, and doesn't mention crime and disorder, but does mention noise. If this is allowed, this will happen. I'm unable to tell from that objector's written objection whether he or she has heard noise in the past. Certainly, those closer to the premises in Althorpe Road do make that point, and I'm not seeking to dismiss it. What we do say is that there are two conditions which we do offer, and this brings me back to 3.3 again. I made remarks earlier that there are some conditions which we would agree to, but we have not agreed to the main conditions at the first, second, and third bullet points. But if I could deal with the last two bullet points: notices shall be prominently displayed in any area used for smoking, requesting patrons to respect the needs of local residents and use the area quietly. That's a given. The next bullet point: a direct telephone number for the manager, designated premises supervisor at the premises should be publicly available at all times the premises is open. Telephone number is made available to residents and businesses in the vicinity. Again, we agree. But the two...
Mr. Vaughan, can I, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I need to have this completely clear. The first three, the last one, your client is not agreeing to. Is that right? No loudspeaker.
Correct.
He's not agreeing to the number 3 that says no loudspeakers are permitted to be used.
That's
He's
correct.
not agreeing to that one.
No, this is an application for music on, includes an application for music on the rooftop terrace.
Thank you.
And if I may say so, number 2 bullet point and number 1 follow from that.
Thank you.
As I say, the two manifestly important conditions which you may wish to consider are those which are alluded to by Mr. Randall in his report. And they are to be summarized at, can take you, the pages aren't numbered, but I think it is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th page in, immediately before the paragraph immediately before the heading conclusion. If I could read it out: the next 2 steps of advised mitigation can now be implemented. Firstly, music system loudspeakers can be relocated to positions on the roof terrace side of the screen, typically 1.5 meters below the top level of the screen. That's a problem, just pausing, that's a problem we had when he first inspected, that they weren't, nor were the screens high enough. Secondly, with the loudspeakers relocated and without the roof terrace in operation, a sound limiting device fitted to the music system can be set at a fixed operating limit, witnessed by NBC Environmental Health, to allow the sound system to provide background music to the patrons of the roof terrace area without impacting adversely on the nearby residential locations. We'd suggest that 2 noise measurement locations in the corner of Althorpe Street and Orchard Street are used as listening positions when setting the music system noise limiter. We agree. The system which is present and available for implementation and has been tested, as you'll see from the reports of Mr. Randall, has already produced readings at, if the committee is with me, there's 2 corners, street corners, immediately at the rear of the building in a sort of horseshoe shape, Orchard Street, Althorpe Street, and he's taken those readings, as the sketch plan shows, on each of those corners. And he is convinced that the mitigation of noise produced by these conditions will be quite satisfactory. And we would hope, in the spirit of understanding of what we're trying to do here, that the objectors would take that on board as well. So we offer those conditions. I'm not sure precisely how they'd be framed, and that may be a matter for the committee, but we would be more than content for environmental health to assist in the setting of the limiter, which I'm not technically aware of these things, but I'm sure can be, to use to coin a phrase, tampered proof. In any event, it being a condition, it's subject to regulation and enforcement. So that's what we say is the principal way in which the noise objection can be mitigated. The proposal, we say, is balanced. The law already provides for deregulation up to 11 p.m., obviously subject to the legal advice you receive. That is the case unless you specifically indicate that the deregulation law shouldn't apply. I think that's the effect of the law, which is alluded to in the report. And so we're simply asking for a little later than that. The actual time, of course, is within the discretion of the committee. But what we're trying to achieve is uniformity within the building. You may know that the premises consist of a staircase access to a first floor, which is indoors, where there are sports facilities in the nature of pool tables, television screens showing sports, and a bar area. And the roof terrace is immediately above that with staircase access. So what we don't want is people, we'd ideally like to avoid people moving between the two simply because the times aren't equal. That would be undesirable. But we say that the conditions offered would be proportionate. We say they're reasonable, and we hope that the facility would be a balance between the needs of the community for peace and quiet, insofar as available. I venture to suggest that this isn't a simple, quiet residential area. It's mixed use, it's commercial. There are other facilities. There's even one further up the Weedon Road, the Sevens. We can't say where all of the patrons to each of these outlets comes from or goes to after using them. But we are trying to build a new venture here, which is attractive. It's different. It's a benefit to St. James. And we say that it's something that ought not to be lightly turned down. The facility of an outside premise of a public house, a normal public house, is normally looked on as a good thing. The difference here, we accept, it's above the premises, so it's not in a garden, it's not at street level, and noise does emanate rather more easily, but it's controllable. And the responsible authorities that we know of, the police have no objection. As I say, I don't want to repeat myself, but we don't understand where this has come from about environmental health, but that can no doubt be inquired into. Above all, there is a planning application, which whatever the result, whatever the outcome today, has still got to be gone through. And there is an opportunity there, which we hope to overcome, for objectors to have their say in that process as well.
Right.
Ma'am, at the risk of not wanting to repeat myself, those are my submissions. I invite anyone concerned to ask any questions they may wish to of Mr. Barnes, the applicant, but perhaps more appropriately, Mr. Randall, if his sound system is now rather better than it was earlier. But we've got his reports, and so that's the application.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I just want to ask you one question. You are suggesting 3 conditions, as far as I can make out. The last 2, that notices be prominently displayed, a direct telephone number, and a sound limiter fitted on any loudspeakers. Is that correct?
It is, ma'am, but I think I've broken the 3rd down into 2 parts, so you may want to make it 4 conditions. That is to say, the location of the loudspeakers 1.5 meters below the screens, the top of the screens, and a limiter. So they're technically 2 different things, I think.
Yes, that's fine. I had made a note of that. Thank you very much. Mr. Randall, could I ask you, I'm sure my colleagues would also have questions. Could I just ask you, because I found this, I wasn't quite sure about this. You, at one stage, you are talking about the positioning of the readings, and you've put Althorpe and Orchard Street. Am I to understand that when you did these readings, you were on the roof? How do you take these readings with regard to the actual sound? I don't know whether my colleagues understand it, but if there's no music being played while you're taking these readings, how do you arrive at your decision?
Oh, very straightforward. We use our own sound source. We have a test sound source, which we put on the roof terrace. We make a loud noise. We measure the noise on the roof terrace. We then go down to the street in the measurement locations, and we make enough noise so we can actually measure the resultant noise down at the street corner. From that, we can do our noise design.
And am I to understand you did this when the new screens that you suggested have been put up?
Yes, and so we can make a judgment that the revised screens have been improved. They were physically improved. We could actually see the improvement, and we could actually hear and measure the improvement, and that's what my second report says. So
right.
So
Thank
the
you.
acoustic screen has been optimised. It has been made as good as it can be at this stage.
Thank you. Right, colleagues, fellow committee members, questions, please. I'm sure you have some about the report and what Mr. Vaughan and Mr. Randall has said. Who'd like to start? Tony, would you like to start?
Yes. Right, I know with COVID and everything, over the last 18 months, the government have been kind of telling people to get out in the fresh air. So I didn't know whether the business has suffered when it has been open, that people don't want to go downstairs, they want to go outside. I have been in the premises once. It was my birthday last year. We went to the Butcher's Arms for lunch, me and some friends, and we chose to go there afterwards. I was very pleasantly surprised what a beautiful place it was. Looking out, it was a bit like Mary Poppins looking out over the rooftops of St. James's. It was a sight to behold, to tell you the truth. I remember years ago when I was a youngster going to Kensington Gardens on the rooftops there. They had a nightclub there. We don't have anything in Northampton like this. Having said that, I've read all the reports. I've also, kind of copied it out, and the screening is very patriotic. It's white, blue and red.
Tony, sorry to interrupt you. Could you ask questions?
Yeah.
It's lovely, but if you could ask a few questions. Time is getting on, and
Okay.
I cannot stay for too long. I have a medical appointment. So if we could just have questions.
Security staff. How many security staff are we going to have? I believe between 3 and 5. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right, okay. I was at an event on Sunday. There was only one security staff, and he managed very well. And he was telling people if they got a bit rowdy, can you keep your noise down? Can you do this? Can you do that? That's what security staff are paid for. And, if you're going to have up to 5, then, well done. That's all I can say. And I think that will help ease the noise if anything does get out of hand.
No questions about, you have no questions about the music. I mean, basically, it's the music that we are having to make the final decision on. So you have no questions about that.
Well, I have, as the environmental noise abatement chap said, you know, what I could hear of him, you know, I think he probably has a few noise issues himself. But, you know, they've done the test. I've been to clubs over the years where all of a sudden the music will cut out if it goes over a certain level. So I don't know. That's what happens. That's the reason you have them. So, you know, if the environmental health people are happy with it, then that's it. They're happy with it.
Well, the environmental health people haven't agreed to any of that, of course, have they? They just tried to put conditions on.
This chap and the whole lot, when they came, I was the chairman at the time, and they got their original license. We weren't really prepared then for as a borough council. We weren't prepared at all for them, as we are again now.
Yes.
You know, people should have papers. Everything should have been done correctly. And once again, it hasn't been. So once again, as a borough council, we're failing them.
Thank you. Julie, could I have any questions from you, please?
Yes. So I take it that will you be doubling the amount of people because you'll now have an additional floor?
Julie, sorry, who is this to? Is this to Mr. Vaughan, or are you directly asking Mr. Barnes now?
Whoever can answer it. Really, I don't know who's got more knowledge. Maybe Mr. Barnes.
I would think it's Mr. Barnes himself.
I think so. Thank you very much. Just carry on, Julie.
So, yes, so we're going to be doubling the amount of people that you can take in to your premises now that can drink there. Is that correct?
No, it's not double it. It's around a third more of what we've got at the minute.
Okay.
Which would be around 240 people for the whole building. That's downstairs and upstairs.
Okay, so you'll have more people coming out onto the streets at closing time. So it could impact on local people. That's my concern. One of them. Anyway, the other one is the fact that having music on a roof. Now, I'll say this quickly. I'm near Delapy Abbey. They have music down there. It's about a quarter of a mile away, and we can hear it a quarter of a mile away. And there are trees all around. So I suppose I'm a bit sceptical about how you're going to be able to control that noise, because it's not just music. We all know when people have had a drink, they're loud, they're raucous, they're shouting. And I do have grave concerns about it. And also, will this be setting a precedent for all, you know, all other establishments to start doing this?
May I speak?
Yes, Mr. Barnes, carry on.
Yeah. As far as I know, all the surrounding pubs in our area are all got the same what we were asking for. So we're only asking sort of what.
Do they have music outside?
I believe so, yeah.
Can I come in there?
Mrs. Williams, I'll get you, Mrs. Williams, I'll give you a chance in a minute. I'll give you a chance in a minute. Julie, what other questions do you have for Mr. Barnes?
I'm just very concerned about the noise.
And you've seen all Mr. Randall's papers and everything?
Oh, I have, but like in practice, I live a quarter of a mile away from the Abbey.
Yeah.
But I can still hear it at night, even with the windows closed, double glazed. So I'm just a bit sceptical.
Thank you very much. James, okay if I bring in Mrs. Williams now?
There was one one thing, if I could just clear up, Chair. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure just from scanning the report. I should probably read it in more detail. But if there was to be a condition with regard to the limitation of the noise decibel level via the speakers, what would that level be?
I think,
I wonder
James,
if the
as far as I
clear
could
that up.
make out, that was going to be determined by our own environmental health. That's
In
as far as I
in
understand it.
conjunction, ma'am, sorry to interrupt, in conjunction with environmental health, yes. I'm not sure whether Mr. Randall is in a position to give us, well, to crunch the numbers. Not that, if I may venture to suggest, you or I would understand what that is unless we're technically qualified in that direction. But I'm sure that there is a way of framing a condition which would oblige the applicant to cooperate with environmental health in setting the limiting level. I don't know whether Mr. Randall has got any comments that he could usefully add to that.
Yes, because it's one thing to make a condition saying what it seems to me you're talking about then would be essentially a preparatory condition rather than what I think is an issue. It really needs to be on is a condition, an enforceable condition regarding the level of noise, rather than just preparatory to doing that. So I'm just struggling to understand what the proposal for noise would be. Otherwise, that would have to be done.
As I understand it, sorry, as I understand it, it's a decibel number. That might be oversimplistic. If it is a decibel number, it would need to be measurable at a certain location or locations. Otherwise, it's meaningless, I think.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, I see that Mr. Randall has advised 2 particular locations anyway. So I'm just thinking about that from the point of view of potentially suggesting an enforceable condition if the members were so minded to go down that route.
Chair, I wonder if Mr. Randall could be asked to offer a view now, even though it might not be to commit himself to a number, but to a way in which a number could be resolved.
Right.
Mr. Randall?
Yes, this is straightforward. Once the loudspeakers and the noise limiter are put in position, a simple noise test can be undertaken with environmental health, whereby you can stand at these street corner measurement positions and actually agree to an audible level of noise, which can then be measured and defined as a number.
Thank you. And that would be judged from where the objectors would be, like the marks you made for Althorpe Street and Orchard Street.
Typically, yeah.
Yes. So let me get it down to basic understanding. Environmental health and probably Mr. Barnes would be on the roof, and yourself, you would agree to a number, decibel number, which we would then test in Althorpe Street and Orchard Street to see if that number was acceptable generally. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, James, anything else? Otherwise, I'll ask Mrs. Williams. Right.
No, that was just I wanted to make sure what was specifically being proposed.
Thank you. Mrs. Williams, I understand you are representing a number of people, residents.
Right.
Have you any idea how many you're representing?
Not offhand, but I just know that it's a lot, a large number.
Yeah, we've got some. Right. What would you like to say? What would you like to ask?
Firstly, I'd like to say you keep calling it Althorpe Street. It's Althorpe Road, because there is an Althorpe Street further away.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Why I tried to jump in earlier, Mr. Barnes said that other local licensed premises were having the same conditions as him. Now, further down the road, St. James Road, there's the pub, the Beckett pub, that has outside music. It's not on a roof, but it's outside, live bands and music. And they have to stop very early evening. And I mean very early evening, because they've had complaints of residents that live around there. So I felt that to say that the other pubs were meeting the same criteria was not right. That was one thing, really. And yes. I don't think the residents are objecting to say not have any music, but it's very much a time scale, because you know we do go to bed round here at certain times. You know, we're not all up till 11 or 1 o'clock at night, and we're not trying to kill this business because we're used to this business. That bar has been there many, many years. We're used to people coming out late at night, probably worse for wear. We've accepted that. We've lived with that round here because it's been done for many years. We're really not trying to close down this business. But in all fairness, I don't know if any of you have had a bad neighbour that is that noisy, you can't go to bed at night and sleep. And this is what we're frightened of. We're not suggesting, you know, we're hoping Mr. Barnes is listening to us, and it sounds like he's trying to. I'll give him his due. But this is our big concern. There's children around here. There's old people around here. Mr. Vaughan spoke as though it was a mixed use area, but it's not. It's a residential area. That bar is in a residential area. And as residents, we do try to accept it's been there, it's there. And also you mentioned we have so many public houses around us. Well, does that mean that you can just keep throwing more at us because of that reason? It's, you know, that's the real things I want to say. But to say the Beckett pub, that has to shut down music very, very early evening that's outside, because those neighbours won't stand it. And I think you're being very unfair to think we can.
So, Mrs. Williams, you are speaking on behalf of a lot of the residents, is that correct?
That's right.
Is it your understanding that if the time that the music had to stop was a sensible earlier time, none of you residents would object to there being music on the roof, provided it didn't go on until 10:30 or 11 at night?
Well, I think we all accept that it's a business that has music, background music, etc. We accept that. We know that. That's, you know, that's what it is. But it's the lateness of it that bothers us all, because, you know, you can take it for so long as you know that's going to finish at a certain time. I mean, there'll be live bands up there, DJs. You know, that takes a bit of standing when you're literally yards away from that premises.
Thank you. Yes.
You know.
And I also understand from some of the objections that my colleagues will have seen as well, that there is a care home for very vulnerable adults.
Yeah. Yes.
Which Mr. Vaughan may not have seen, of course. Mr. Vaughan, would you like to talk to your client about this latest suggestion from Mrs. Williams on the time factor?
I'm prepared to take instructions, but obviously not in a public environment.
Well, exactly. I appreciate that. James, could I ask you what the situation is now with regard to this point that Mrs. Williams is making and the decision that we are able to make today?
Sorry, what what point was that from Mrs. Williams?
That she and the residents, they're not really objecting per se to the music. It's the time that it's going to go on until.
Okay, Mrs. Williams, I think one way of rephrasing that question would be, what time would you and the other residents whom you're representing be happy for music to continue until?
Well, when it's outside on a roof, let's face it, if you've got children going to bed at night, I think 9 o'clock. But I can understand Mr. Barnes won't be very happy with that. But you have to have the music inside then, don't you? You know, I mean, because what can I say, really? The earlier the better for the residents. But, you know, in reality, if I'd got fortunately, I haven't got small children now, but if I'd got small children going to sleep at night, to bed, I think 9 o'clock is a fair time.
Fine.
But maybe if it went down to background music at that time of night, that, you know, very controlled background music. But to have a band up there, and this could be any night of the week, weekends, bank holidays, you know, will we get a break from it once it starts?
Thank you. Now, Julie, you've got your hand up, and so has Martin. Julie, was yours a question? Because then I think I'll move to Martin if it's just a question you have.
No, sorry, I just moved my hand, I think.
All right, thank you. Martin, could I have your comment?
Yeah, that's right.
Could I have your comments, Martin, please?
Yeah, certainly. It was just the fact that what's been applied for is alcohol only.
Exactly.
By the very fact that they've applied for alcohol, as I've said in the report, deregulation will allow music till 11 o'clock. And I don't know that there's a legal way that we can actually change that. Because
fine. Yes, thank you very much. I think, unless anybody has got anything particular to say, I think at this juncture, I would quite like to take everybody out and just
Ma'am, could I do apologise. I'm not sure I can find the hand up signal, but may I just make one small point? There is a distinction to be drawn, it seems to me, from the objectors between live music and what she described as background music, in other words, recorded music. And of course, those two different entertainments are separately regulated in the application, so that it does fall to the committee, or the discretion would be to the committee, to draw a distinction between live music in terms of perhaps time limits and background music, which seems to be a lower level of problem, if I can put it that way. So I urge upon you to take that into account. But by and large, the essential point is really a question of how the delimiter works, the limitation. Surely, I mean, this is all about decibels at the end of the day. And if that is brought into control, surely that must mitigate against the time limits that the objectors would have us close down the music altogether at and I won't say it's an arbitrary, but at a set time limit, even if the music isn't creating a problem in the first place.
Fine. Thank you very much. I think it's time the committee and the solicitor, if we had a little chat. So please, Maisie, could you take everybody out?
Sorry, can I just ask a question,
Yes,
Councillor? I'm just trying to make sure I get everything right in my head before you discuss this matter. It's to Mr. Vaughan. Yes, as you can see, I think it's at page 28 of the committee report. There's the licensable hours at the minute, and of course it says playing of recorded music indoors at paragraph F, part F. So is the proposal for the application for the extension of hours to essentially apply those extended hours to both indoors and outdoors with regard to licensable activities of serving alcohol and the playing of recorded music? Have I got that correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Right.
Well, is that all, James?
Yeah. I was just making sure, because of what Martin said about this isn't specifically an application to extend with regard to the playing of recorded music.
No.
It was purely to extension of hours. But if the intention is to extend that F of playing of recorded music to indoors and outdoors rather than just indoors, which is what it says at the minute.
Well, basically, of course, today,
yes,
it is purely for a license for a bar on the roof. Basically, that's what this is today, is it not?
Ma'am, if I may say so, I believe that Martin's intervention was to draw attention to section 177A of the Licensing Act.
Yeah, fine. Okay, thank you very much. Maisie, can you take everybody except James and Tony and Julie and myself out? Martin, if we need you, I'll get her to bring you back in again.
Yeah, I will just take 5 just to go take a natural
Yeah, okay, doke.
Natural.
Natural. Everybody out, Maisie.
Yes, Chair, everybody's out.
Ed, right. Right.
Sorry, Councillor, just quickly, what time's your medical appointment?
Oh, it's all right. I've got another hour
Okay.
and a bit.
I was just trying to think of whether you wanted to do this now or whether you want to take the 5 days to make a decision option.
No. I can drive to it. I can leave. Well, it sounds silly to say I can wait until 2 o'clock, which seems ages away. But I'm just wondering, how we're going. Committee, can I have any comments? What your thoughts are? And I know, Tony, and I agree with you, that this pub, like all pubs, have lost money during lockdown. I'm not sure that is something we really should take into account.